I want to get right to it with Kunjan Sabani, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Semiconductor Analyst out there in our San Francisco Bureau. Kunjan, good to have you here with us. As the numbers came out, initially we saw a rally in Broadcom, then it sold off, and now it's back up about 3%. Walk us through the quarter and the outlook. What's the read here on the company?
Yeah, I mean, everything came as what people expected. I'm looking at the numbers, both, like you said, both 4Q, 1Q, almost in line. So no concerns there. The very important thing is they did increase dividend, as I'm reading, 11%, much higher than what we had expected. We had expected somewhere between mid to high single digits. So that's really promising. And that's what its long-standing shareholders care about, the cash flow and the dividend back to the shareholders. I do see the semiconductor revenues slightly beat the estimates, as well as the AI revenues came in above the guide. So that is positive. However, both those numbers were sort of in line to what we and some of the buy-sider investors were expecting.
When you look at AI revenues, who are the customers on the AI side for Broadcom?
Yeah, so it's your largest, the largest customer right now is on the custom side is Google. We estimate there's going to be Meta, and now we heard the news about Apple. So these are sort of the three widely popular customer names that we know of. But they also have a significantly large AI networking business where there's a lot more customer base there just beyond these top 2-3 guys.
I am thinking about, the bouncing around. Do you think the stock is higher because of the dividend increase, raising that quarterly dividend 11%? Is it about that, or is it about the business?
I think it's a bit too premature to comment on right now. We will hear, remember, they don't give segment level details in the press release just came out. So we have to wait for the calls where we'll really know how each of the segment did, and they'll talk more about how the first Q, what they expect for each segment. But just having seen what we have seen so far, I think the stock is reacting sort of okay because there were the concerns of softer guide or a miss on the guide are no longer there. So coming into the earnings, as we talked previously, there were concerns about AI being sort of flattish or wireless being softer. Because the numbers came in line, I think that sort of gave a breather to everyone that nothing is falling apart.
Hey, in your preview for the fourth quarter today, you said that the company is set for a healthy fourth quarter, driven by a seasonally strong wireless segment benefiting from new iPhone demand, continued momentum in AI and cloud networking, custom compute, and VMware as well. I want to go to the wireless segment. What do we need to understand about how Broadcom plays in the wireless segment and where that industry is, and how, given that there's some concerns about people not upgrading as frequently to new phones, that business could be affected?
Yeah, so wireless essentially for Broadcom is just one customer, the Apple, right? So that's all they only sell to right now. So it's all exposed by how Apple does, if Apple units grow, if Apple price points grow. I mean, they do see a price increase almost every year as they ship new generations of products into Apple. So that business has been a pretty good, like mid-single digit cash growing business for them. They generate a lot of cash from that business. I know there were some news this morning about Apple sort of switching Broadcom out.
Yeah.
Frankly, we have heard that news many times over the last 3 years. It has not come to fruition yet, so it's too premature for us to comment. If that were to happen, though, just so that we can rationalize and structurize the impact, it won't be a right away cliff that they go all zero, right? So they do sell multiple chips to Apple. If the Wi-Fi Bluetooth combo was to be taken out, it will be a phased out where Apple would start from smaller devices and then go to their premium devices. And even if that does happen, we think that business is about max $2.5 to $3 billion. You already are seeing Broadcom working with Apple on the custom side. So that custom side revenue within few years could easily offset that loss if that were to happen.
All right. So you've got these interesting dynamics, hence the frenemies, because yesterday we saw Broadcom shares, jumping like 7%, almost 7%, a $314 billion rally. We were all kind of obsessed on the news that Apple was working with Broadcom on AI server chips, and yet you have Apple maybe moving away from Broadcom in this other story. I mean, so is there a net for Broadcom in terms of its relationship with Apple, which we know in terms of customers, Apple's a huge one?
Yeah, and if I were to pick which product or which end market you lose out on, then again, I would definitely go with the custom design because that is the future growth driver. And as we know, the smartphone overall market is not as growthy of a market as AI in data servers.
So, okay, so let's talk about the AI and data servers market here and the opportunity for Broadcom moving forward. You mentioned Meta Platforms. You also mentioned, what was the other hyperscaler? That's the biggest
Google.
customer? Yeah, thank you. That old guy.
That old company.
That old company. Where else in terms of diversity does Broadcom need to go, given that these hyperscalers are also working on their own?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about these hyperscalers are working on their own, typically they're working with a silicon design partner, which is Broadcom. So the more the hyperscalers work on their own chips,
okay.
the better it is for someone like Broadcom or a Marvell. It's really those two custom design partners that all of these customers are working with.
Would you say Marvell is the biggest sort of corollary competitor to Broadcom?
In that arena, yes.
What about if you look at the entire business?
Well, Broadcom is sort of a conglomerate, for the lack of a better word, right? It's got 40 or 45% software revenues and the rest chip revenues. Within the chip revenues as well, it's got wireless, it's got the typical cyclical broad market businesses. So I think the corollary between Broadcom and Marvell would be primarily on the networking business and the custom business.
So just to rehash, we are seeing Broadcom stock jumping here in the aftermarket. The stock is still up about 3.5%. And so we continue to see this company reporting, better than expected profit in the fourth quarter, driven by artificial intelligence demand. I do feel like as these earnings in your world that continue to come in, these financial updates, does it show that we are seeing that corporate spend on AI, it continues to happen?
Well, we definitely do, and there's many metrics, right? When you see the chip companies exposed to these rallies continue to come on, beat and raise, the magnitude varies from quarter to quarter, but overall showing annual growth. On the other hand, we continue to see the CapEx numbers by the biggest spenders, the hyperscaler and cloud guys, continue to go up quarter over quarter. 25 is again expected to be a bigger year. So until we don't see sort of reduction or a slowdown, major or significant slowdown in spending by their customers and the beat and raises and earnings from the semi suppliers, we can say that the demand rally has legs and can continue further.
You know that Broadcom has come out, Kunjan, and said that they expect to get more than $10 billion in annual revenue from the AI market, outpacing other parts of its business. Do we know exactly how much they are getting that's AI related at this point?
I mean, yeah, so their fiscal 24, with the year that just ended, their AI revenues, what they reported was about 12.2 billion.
Okay.
So we know that for sure. And I haven't seen the forecast for fiscal 25. Maybe they will share it during the call, but we definitely estimate significant increase, close to 16 billion at least for the next year.
Right, fiscal year 2024 to AI revenue of 12.2 billion. All right, so we're looking for more. So what's your number one question on the analyst call?
Well, that exact number, what's the guide for the AI for fiscal 25?
Shares up 3% in the after hours. Chipmaker reported fourth quarter results that beat expectations on key metric. The company said AI revenue grew 220% from the year ago period that it gave, and it also gave an outlook. That stock up more than 60% so far this year. The company sees revenue coming in between 14.6, saw revenue coming in at $14.61 billion, $14.6 billion rather. The estimate was for 14.61. So certainly bang on in terms of estimates there. And then the company saw earnings per share, Carol, come in at $1.42, beating estimates of $1.39.
Yeah, and again, as Tim mentioned, Broadcom up 3.2%. We are continuing to talk with Bloomberg Intelligence senior semiconductor analyst Kunjan Sabani. I have to say, Kunjan, we put together a weekend broadcast and podcast, and it was all AI because it just felt like there was such a dump of news this week. And so it does feel like, once again, in 2025, this is going to carry over, and we're going to continue to see the spend by companies on things related to AI, whether it's continuing to build out infrastructure or software when it comes to this world. Do you agree?
Definitely.
Sorry.
Definitely agree. I mean, like I said, if you just look around the space, right, whether it's the suppliers who help build this, the infrastructure, whether it is the buyers of these equipments and chips who are building the infrastructure, and now we are starting to see, some signs of monetization coming from these builds and infrastructure. So we definitely feel 25 at least sort of is in the bank. I mean, given the numbers I'm looking at from all the top AI chip companies, I'm seeing robust growth, and the risk is actually on the upside. Like how much more can we get from here?
Would you describe what we're seeing right now in terms of AI as a revolution, as a cycle, as something akin to what we saw with the moving online of things in the 90s and 2000s? Like how do you describe the phenomenon that we're seeing right now?
I think I would compare it sort of to when like it was the iPhone moment for smartphones, and the second comparable would be sort of when we saw the indent of cloud, right? It's an inflection point in terms of technological compute and how we use technology, and you always see this rise at the beginning phases until you reach sort of a normalized phase. After that, we see more of a cyclical behavior, at least from a semiconductor perspective. We don't think from a semiconductor perspective we are anywhere close to that normalization phase yet, where we should start worrying about cyclicality here.
What about the upstarts? And I think about Adobe and some other companies, in terms of the AI spend, that we kind of hear this caveat that there's fears by investors when it comes to some of the upstarts in the AI world. Is that like the companies that we are talking about, whether it's NVIDIA or some of the big tech companies in terms of what they are doing when it comes to AI platforms and utilization of massive amounts of data? Is it these companies that will continue to kind of reign and rule in this space, or do you anticipate that there will be startups that maybe we're not quite talking about yet that are going to be a lot and involved in a big way? I think about OpenAI all of a sudden, like we talk about that a lot. So I'm just curious from your vantage point, especially when it comes to the semi space.
Yeah, I mean, look, every time we have seen a big inflection in technology, we have often seen new startups come out and, dethrone the incumbents. Now, having a caveat, these incumbents right now are the largest they've ever been. So there is that factor too big to fail. But we definitely expect some kind of shift. A couple of examples, we have seen AI-focused IPOs in the last 2 years in semiconductor, which have really come out and are challenging the incumbents. One name is ARM. Another IPO we have recently seen is Astera Labs, right, who is competing with the giants in the room, which are Broadcom and Marvell, and have immediately come out and taken a significant share. So we do expect these startups, especially in the semiconductor space that I see, to come out and do cause disruption. But again, the giants have become bigger and bigger.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Listen, thank you so much. You gave us such a big chunk of time. We know you've got some research to probably write on the Bloomberg Intelligence.
Yeah, he's got
side.
a job to do, Carol. I don't know, we're holding him for so long.
Well,
we definitely appreciate it.
It's a super important space.